DEADPIT Radio, voices in the dark, haunting tales, tearing us apart. Questions lingering, never clear, screaming answers we don't want to hear.
Howdy, folks, and welcome to a very special night, Uncle Bill. We finally, had some curveballs thrown our way, some fucking fires and shit out in Los Angeles. Slowed it down a little bit for us, but we do have a very special interview tonight.
It's an interview that I don't think many people that have seen our streams and things like that ever thought would happen, but it's an excellent interview with none other than Severin's own David Gregory.
It's going to be huge. Lots of fun stuff to talk about. Michael Felsher's joining us on there as well. And yeah, it's a fun conversation about physical media in general and all that. And I know everybody's going to love it. We tried to go through all the questions that everybody sent in. There were some, of course, that we missed. Everything that you really wanted us to mention, I think we kind of mentioned it.
I think we covered it all, yeah.
So stay tuned. It's a pretty good interview. And for members of our Patreon page, we're going to have everything up there uncut, including the extended conversation with Felsher after the interview with David Gregory. So DEADPIT on Patreon.com. That'll be dropping next week. But yeah, check this one out, guys. It's a lot of fun. David Gregory of Severin Film.
What?
I just wanted a little bit of a background, David, on how you got involved. At what point in time did you take an interest in films in general? Do you remember the movie?
Yeah, it was King Kong 1976 was the one that my parents took me to the cinema when I was 4 or 5. So that was the one where it all, became very clear to me that was the path.
What was it about that movie, by the way?
Oh, it was the giant ape. I was on side with the giant ape. And I couldn't believe that he died at the end. It was very soon after that I saw the 1933 one on television, but the 1976 was the one that I saw in the cinema. And I'd probably been taken to the theater before that to see Disney and stuff, but that was the one that resonated.
Jessica Lange.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, when I interviewed Jessica Lange for Frances for Anchor Bay in 2001, I took a picture of her in King Kong's hand to sign, and she just kind of rolled her eyes. She did sign it, but she wasn't particularly.
I always loved the poster
this was
art.
The one for me, and she was
for
like,
that one.
Whatever.
A lot of people may not realize, and I was doing a little bit of digging, that you had a VHS label before pretty much everything else.
Yes.
The exploited label in the UK. Now, it was an interesting time because this was like late 90s, right?
Yes.
And Anchor Bay was kind of doing the same thing. You would get involved in with Anchor Bay shortly after that.
That's right. Well, so one of a couple of the first titles we licensed were Maniac and Vigilante. So that's kind of how I got in touch with Bill Lustig. And so we were on a train to disaster, basically trying to have a boutique VHS label in England, just because censorship was still strict and still is to some extent, but it was still very strict at that point. So even though I was dumb and optimistic that times had changed and that I could make a case for the movies that we were putting out, particularly as we were appealing specifically to genre film fans, the censors didn't care about that. So a lot of the films that we released were cut or even banned. Maniac was banned outright.
It's pretty interesting though, like Anchor Bay Entertainment, because me and Uncle Bill, we get nostalgic for that time. And like a lot of the labels, Blue Underground, Severin, kind of spun off from that a little bit. Like Did you and Felcher meet up around that time, or how did that work?
I joined Anchor Bay in 2000. That's when I would have first communicated with David. I think.
Same. Yeah. So we were at the same time, but I was in the LA office, which was on the Universal lot when I first got out there. And you were in Michigan.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that we actually met in person. I'm pretty sure we spoke and emailed quite.
Several times. Yeah. There was, and then I first became aware of who David was when I saw the Joe Spinell story on Maniac, and that was the first time I realized, oh wait, you can do this sort of thing for horror movies. Because before then, retrospectives like that were exclusively the domain of the big budget films and classics like Gone with the Wind, Casablanca, things like that. Yeah. You just wouldn't see shit. And I couldn't believe, how good that was. And I just thought, oh man, that kind of, got me sparking my filmmaker, urge again. I was just
and I think that's really how it. Thank you for that, Michael. But yeah, it was definitely kind of what Jay Douglas and Bill were doing at Anchor Bay in those early days, that they actually had a vision of how much more spectacular these releases could be than you could do the basics on the format, which a lot of those early DVDs were, interactive menus,
they were flicker discs,
chapter selections.
Right? But it was very early on that they started. I mean, Bill was really a film fan. So was Jay to an extent, but Bill loved the idea of going to meet Christopher Lee to do a commentary for Scars of Dracula or whatever it was. So he and I actually became friendly as film fans as well. And so when I was doing Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Shocking Truth for Exploited, so that was my documentary that I did for my VHS label, Bill was in it because he was just as somebody who talked about seeing it when it first came out. And because I was doing a documentary, he's like, hey, Anchor Bay's just licensed a bunch of Studio Canal titles. One of them is The Wicker Man. Do you want to do a documentary about The Wicker Man? And so that was when I saw that they were, they didn't just want to do the basics on the extras. They actually wanted to get, because the book had come out at the same time about the making of the film and how problematic it was. And that was like, oh, well, this is kind of like Chainsaw in that it's got more to it than just a making of a movie. There's a whole load of stories around it, just the background before the script, and then all the trouble that happened after the film was finished, and then how it became the cult classic that it became. So The Wicker Man was a good starting point for me in Anchor Bay, and Bill brought me out to do the editing in the US, and he really liked it. And so at that point he was like, let's find other titles that Anchor Bay is doing to do significant extras on, rather than just basics. So that it was really there. And Jay was the one who was approving all this to happen, because he was the one who greenlit everything. Ultimately, Bill would go to him, and then and so they really allowed a long leash for me to do stuff for those Anchor Bay releases.
I remember the one that, because we worked for almost 2 years to get the rights to Near Dark cleared up, because that one, the Studio Canal owned it. They had the rights to it, but they didn't know it. So they had to basically, it was just a big freaking mess. But we went to the nines on that release, and David and his crew did, was it Pray for Daylight?
Living in Darkness.
Living in Darkness, yeah. And then it was, they got Bill Paxton in there. They had Catherine Bigelow, everybody, and it was just, it was just so cool to see these things come through. We get to check this, and it's like, what did David come up with this time? It was just like, and for everything, it was all, not just for the big horror titles. Yeah, we were seeing the smaller ones getting full commentary.
Right, like the Hammer film To the Devil a Daughter.
I love that featurette. I love that one so much.
Not held in high regard, but it was the end of Hammer, so it seemed to me that was a story worth telling. That context, that the Hammer could not keep up with the demands of the market. So there were things like that where it's like, hey, let's look for a story, beyond just the, hey, it was awesome working with this person.
I actually showed the To the Devil a Daughter featurette at a convention to a crowd as like a preview, and they loved it. Especially all the Richard Widmark stories.
Well, exactly, yeah. When you have a trouble
Trouble productions are so much fun.
Or an angry actor or something like
Right.
that. And people liked that was
Oh,
that
yeah.
was the thing that became very apparent early on, was because they were talking about movies that were made decades ago. They
Mhm.
didn't have to be in that kind of I'm promoting the movie mode.
Oh yeah.
And they knew how the movie was now perceived. They knew about its shortcomings. They knew its failures or why people loved it and all that kind of thing. So it made for this whole new way of talking about movies. So at that point, and Michael, I'm sure you had the same experience. At that point in the early days of DVD, it was much easier to get people because
Oh yeah.
wow, we're talking about that movie from 20 years ago. I
Yeah.
often get people coming up to me telling me how they love it, blah, 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 blah. But they've not really had a chance to sort of talk about it in depth at that point.
And so a lot of these people were either out of the business or were in a part of the business where it didn't matter anymore. So they were half past giving a fuck. So they would just say, "Oh yeah, that guy was an asshole," and "Oh, he was drunk every single day. He was on the set," and you have to balance that. And I'm sure David could. You have to balance that in the editing. You don't want to come off as being like ganging up on
it's really all bad stories,
Yeah.
But they had a certain leeway where they weren't sort of contractually obliged,
Right.
because they were helping the box office, which is going to help them in the future, that kind of thing. There was very much a now we can talk about it the same way we talk about it at parties or with fans who come up to us or things like
it was a stark contrast to when I shot behind the scenes stuff. I commissioned some stuff on the Children of the Corn remake from like 2007.
Oh, that was a great one. Yeah.
And that production, everybody hated the director. Everyone hated being there. But in every EPK, they're all smiling like this.
Yeah.
I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, God.
But it also made you, when you saw those EPKs on HBO or whatever, or
Right.
you saw a lot of the studio-produced featurettes, you just realized how low the bar was in terms of making a documentary about the making of a film.
Yeah.
Basically, wow, they're really not treating these as... I mean, they're commercials, basically.
That's basically, they've just gone
from making, a documentary or a featurette, as they're called, and when they're shorter, it was much easier to. It seemed like there was a lot of runway for us to actually improve on what.
Well, David, like Joe Spinell's story was a legitimate documentary. You would look at some of these ones that were done, especially in the '80s. Some of those EPKs would play like music videos.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they would. Yeah,
there was no content.
Well, Joe Spinell's story was particular because it's going to be attached to Bill's film. Bill was particularly gracious with the leeway he gave me in terms of how far and how deep and wide I could go with who I could go and get. Like there was even talk of going to get Friedkin up in Portland at one point, although he couldn't do it because he was working on some film. But there was a lot of travel was involved in. I got Buddy Giovinazzo in Berlin, for example. To talk about Maniac 2, but then also all the archival stuff. So I managed to find that bit which is now kind of famous, where
the Spielberg,
and Frank Pesh are hanging out when the Oscars are announced, and he doesn't get nominated, and it's a classic bit because Frank Pesh actually told the story in his interview, and it was like, wait, we've got to find this footage. He told the story that a camera crew, but he had no idea who it was. It was just a camera crew that came down. Luckily, my then wife worked at the Academy, and they had there was a specific guy who was an archivist, and he actually knew what it was, and they had a VHS copy of it in the archive. Then I had to find the people who produced it, which I was able to do, and I think we got it for like $50 or something.
Jesus, like that footage! I love it when he's like, "Who do they think directed the movie? The Shock?"
Yeah, yeah. Who's getting who around here? It was really cool. And then and that's another example where you would get people that you wouldn't necessarily think about when doing a making of. So all the people who were in Joe's kind of inner circle, who were not really movie people, like his best friend Luke, but then all their entourage of people who Joe had tried to make Maniac 2 with, and all that kind of stuff. So that was one where it was just like that. With this, we have to make this good because of what it is,
Yeah, I mean, and not to blow smoke up David's ass too much, but that was really a huge inspiration. So much so that when I got the chance to do a Texas Chainsaw Massacre documentary, I specifically didn't want to copy what he had already done, because he, you know, The Shocking Truth was very, you know, encompassed and you know, pretty much the entire making of the film. He had people that, you know, I was not going to get access to. Jim Sedow had passed away by that point, and so I did a documentary that concentrated on people that weren't in that documentary.
Right.
And so it complemented it rather than competed with it.
It's very true. And I remember we talked about that at the time, because you love Texas Chainsaw just as much as I do.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you know, you wanted to do something that complemented it. And I think I told you to go after Dr. Barnes as well, who was
that was an amazing
really
thing.
knew about at the time. But but
yeah.
you also got Ed Neal and like key people who were not in Shocking Truth.
And it was funny with Dr. Barnes. He was just this really low key guy, and we're sitting there in like his little workshop area or whatever. He just opens this box and pulls out the original molds for Grandpa's face, the screen used molds and everything. It's like, oh yeah, I just had these in a box. I'm like, you must be rich, because you don't realize the value of these fucking things sitting here right now. What people would pay for these. And he's just like,
that's exactly right. And I think, didn't he, in his will, he ordered everything to be destroyed?
I don't know what happened.
I
He
think
died
that's
a
what he
few
did.
years after I saw. He was up there when I saw him.
But then it came back the other way, because when Terry McMinn, the girl on the hook, decided to finally speak, because she wasn't in either of our documentaries.
No.
When she finally decided to speak, Michael was involved in producing all the extras for that disc.
Yeah.
But he got me to do the interview with
Yeah,
him.
you got to shoot.
In
So
LA.
we were trading off featurettes on Chainsaw for a long period of time. I think you were in the lead again. By
Did I do something else?
Because you did one with Ron Bozeman after that.
Yeah.
And
And
then
I did the commentary with Toby for the
So it's like it's like a badminton match. We're just passing Chainsaw back and forth.
But now there's like, aren't there like 100 Chainsaw documentaries now? I think.
There's so
quite a
many
few.
now. It's like I don't
Couple
even.
every year at this point.
Yeah, I mean it's just like with Chainsaw 2. I've done so many revisits on that. There's just nothing left. There's just like I can't think of anything.
Which is why now I try to look for actual standalone documentaries. I try to look for subjects that haven't been done.
Yeah,
everything now has been done quite a lot. So
I can think of one that has never been done, and I've been trying to get Felsher to do it.
What is it?
King Frat.
Ah, there you go.
You know, even the producers
Pull that out of nowhere.
Even the producers of that movie don't know where the hell it is.
I'm sure that's true.
Well, there's got to be a film print or something.
Oh,
there's film prints.
Yeah, it looked like shit.
So it was actually included in a library of films that we bought. There is no actual paperwork beyond that deal for it. So while we technically could release it based on that paperwork, I don't know that I would go to great lengths to restore it in just in case somebody else is like, hang on a minute, you don't own that, we do.
Wonderful.
But yes, you're right. There is no making of.
I would like to see it.
Yeah. No, there is no making. Although
another
one
one.
The key people are still around for that. They're still. I've worked with all of them.
Isn't Ken Wiederhorn involved?
Wiederhorn's still around. The producer Ruben Train, I interviewed him, and then the lead, I got him for Isaac a Stranger.
Yeah.
Santy
or something.
Santy, Santy's still around.
You can have that one, Mike.
You'll make a fortune.
Okay, King Frat.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna clean up with King Frat.
There's another one though that we used to joke with you about forever, and he kind of blew us off, but you eventually released it at Severin, the peanut butter solution. I know it's a big seller.
Yeah, and it was actually Kayla Janice, I think, who suggested that first, because Canadian kids were all of them traumatized by that film. Canadian kids of a certain era.
Well, they had it
I was unfamiliar with the film, other than that it was playing Draft Houses.
It was on HBO back in the day quite a bit too. That's how I saw it. So
yeah,
that was that's one of those movies where it's like, really?
It's a fever dream movie for sure.
I question every creative decision made in this movie.
Yeah, but people love it. And,
they do.
They were scarred by it. Makes it all the better.
Yeah. I've got to ask about this too, because there's a collection of films that you've done with Severin that me and a bunch of the people really appreciate, which is the Bruno Mattei films and all of his stuff and the collection that he did. Felsher, listen,
4K box
I
set.
think.
No, I don't have.
Listen,
I don't
for
think
my
it gets
money-
through to Bataille. I really don't.
I don't say a word about Bataille. For my money, like he's one of the most entertaining trash filmmakers that there is. Like I just really believe
I
that.
absolutely agree. Although I wouldn't necessarily even call it trash. I don't think there's anything trash about something that's that entertaining. But basically, you know, they I would say, because it was, you know, Fragasso and Rosella Drudi as well were very key creatives in that partnership. But they knew that what they were making wasn't, you know, fine cinema. But what they were doing was, you know, taking what little resources they were given and getting as much on the screen as they could. You know, so basically, you know, they're like, whether it makes sense, whether the acting is good, those kinds of things are actually secondary to be able to blow
It
up.
really is.
You know, like blowing shit up, jumping off waterfalls, you know, all that kind of stuff was
Gore, stuff like just
you know, and I appreciate that. I actually find those films very entertaining. I mean, particularly Hell of the Living Dead. That was one I saw quite a young age, and so we've just done the UHD and massive novelization of Hell of the Living Dead. So
how do you novelize that movie?
Oh my god,
Be very creative.
You've got. So, do I have it here? It's huge. It's like the Brothers Karamazov. It's
what the fuck is it?
It's massive, in-depth, epic novelization.
There are no characters in the movie.
By Brad. Well, so here's the thing: that movie, where it was one of Fragasso's first scripts, and him and Rosella basically delivered a global zombie apocalypse epic. Mm-hmm. And basically, the producers were like, "We don't have the money for this. Yeah. Rip." And so basically, they boiled it down to the film that a highly entertaining film that we ended up getting. But so Brad actually spoke to them about what their initial idea was, and from that, he made this zombie apocalypse epic, and it's a genuinely great book.
I got to read
You need to check this
Felcher's
out.
birthday's coming up here.
I gotta check that one. I'm loving the novelizations that are coming out for all these things.
Well, wasn't there one for Rats too? I mean, that's another great film.
Yeah.
Well, you got to do Rats.
Yeah, if we're doing Rats and Hell of the Living Dead, you got to do both.
I know you're being sarcastic, Felsher, but that's another great movie. Rats is another great movie.
It's a movie. It's certainly a movie.
The ending is like a Twilight Zone.
It's an ending to end all. It's like it's a big like, okay, what have you got to beat that? It's basically like, I don't know how you beat that, because how did you even come up with that?
I remember watching the test disc of that and Hell of the Living Dead back at Anchor Bay, and I'm sitting there in my office watching these movies going, what? What? Even by Italian low-budget film standards, these things are incomprehensible. But
but that's another thing. So being comprehensible, not the number one point.
No, not at all. Not even in the top
as they
10.
aren't in Fulci movies, as they aren't in Argento movies sometimes. So being comprehensible is definitely secondary.
No, and I don't need that from those movies.
You're not going to get it.
You're not, because
I actually got to see Rats at a festival in Warsaw recently. We presented our 4K, and it was a hoot, man. Like the audience was howling.
All right. So another question off that one too, though. So you did Hell of the Living Dead, which a lot of people say mildly resembles Dawn of the Dead. I don't see it, but people say it does.
I would say it actually resembles Zombie more than it resembles.
It does. It's like
they're all dressed like the SWAT members from Dawn.
But their hats don't fit.
They got a tiny.
Yeah, you have the SWAT. You have the music's kind of similar.
Right.
Sounds a little bit like it, but not really.
Yeah.
But then another couple things I've noticed is like you've released other movies like Shocking Dark. And there's Cruel Jaws.
Yeah.
And what's the other one?
Cruel Jaws coming to 4K. That's what
all the Filipino ones, all the Robo War, for example.
Robo War's
the Strike Commando. There's all that stuff. We released a ton of them.
In Cruel Jaws, did he hire the dude just because he looked like Hulk Hogan?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Of course.
That's fucking
that was the only requirement. That makes sense.
Yeah, David, I got a question now that you're there, because you've done some just amazing box sets over the last several years. I mean, just complete tributes to not just filmmakers, but just like the Haunts box sets are just amazing. Which one's been the most difficult to put together? The one that kind of stands out. It's like, oh, that was a bitch.
I guess the Black Emmanuel one was probably the most difficult because there's so many different entities into the films, and not cheap entities as well. So,
well, Studio Canal still has some of those, right?
Yeah. So the Studio Canal ones were actually quite easy because we've been licensing a lot of stuff on Studio Canal, and they do good scans themselves.
Right.
That comes as part of the deal. But so we had to license stuff from various different territories because once Kayla took over producing it, it had to be very thorough. So even if a film was released with the Emmanuel title in Scandinavia and Finland,
that's enough.
It's like that counts. That's in there. You know what I mean? So stuff like that ended up okay. I guess we've got to do that. So it just kept on growing and growing and growing. But I think it's a phenomenal.
It's a great set
that she with what she was able to put together there.
Oh yeah, the Al Adamson one and the Ray Dennis.
The Al Adamson one was actually one of the easier ones, just because most of the films are owned by the same guy, Sam German. So it comes down to licensing in a lot of in terms of how complex these things are.
Well, I imagine with Al Adamson, the difficulty had to be how many different versions of these movies are there? Because it seemed like they did retitling and recuttings for every one of them.
Absolutely, and it was hilarious when we were doing the check disc stage, and that disc two came up with Psycho a Go-Go, Fiend with the Electronic Brain, and Blood of Ghastly Horror, because Jason, who was QCing the disc, would basically be like, Jesus, okay, a new one. This one's a horror one. It's like, wait, this is the same movie. It's just got like this little bit. And so after we did that, please give me a disc that doesn't have 3 versions of the same movie on it. And so then we gave him the Fakers and Hell's Bloody Devils.
Yeah,
exactly the same thing. Basically, they took the same movie but added some biker footage.
Right. Yeah.
60% of the movie is exactly the same.
Yeah. No, that was amazing. It was just like, my God, they didn't know how to market any of this shit.
Oh, they did. They knew how to absolutely wring
every dime they could out of it. Yeah, I guess it's just
with Cruel Jaws. It's got a little bit of a questionable history there because Scream Factory originally was going to do it, and what was the issue? I mean, you don't have to say, of course, if you can't, but like you took it off the site a couple of years ago. Was it you guys did the slipcover thing, or what was the deal?
The slipcover didn't help, that's for sure. But basically, not saying that we did it. We didn't do that. But basically, basically, Cruel Jaws was is even the producer who licensed us the movie was like, we got a little close to the knuckle on the whole, imitation being the highest form of flattery on Cruel Jaws. And so with that, we were actually in the process of doing a deal with Universal for some other films. And basically they realized that we were the Cruel Jaws people, and they basically canceled the deal for the Universal films. So they Vinegar Syndrome ended up doing them. But we didn't get sued or told to take it, told to cease and desist or anything like that. They were just not particularly happy about it.
You would think at this point they really wouldn't give a shit anymore. I mean,
the question, the way, I honestly on Cruel Jaws, they probably don't. Honestly, it was more a kind of precaution. It's not like anyone's mistaking Cruel Jaws for Jaws.
No.
Although I will argue it's better than Jaws 3 and Jaws the Revenge. But
what is it?
Just me.
I mean,
but it's like nobody could hurt your brand.
Worse than your own movie. Yeah.
But yeah, it was. Sorry, I forgot where I was going with that. But basically, it was a little too close to home.
So that's probably not something you're going to re-release in the future, right?
You can still get it. Oh, you know what it was as well was that we had to use the. So this was something we concluded ourselves because basically, and it wasn't something we were stopped from doing. But initially, the poster that we used had the shark, which was basically the shark that was on the Jaws poster, and maybe even on the Pete Eventually novel. I don't know, but basically, that shark had been used on a number of different posters for Jaws ripoffs. right? So we just assumed, well, if that poster was used in Spain or Japan or wherever it was, usually you can use that if it was marketing for the film. But at that point we were like, maybe if Universal pissed off about it, we probably should be a bit more careful about what image we're using on the cover. So therefore it had to be the one that was made by the Italians for the movie, which isn't the same shark. But what I was going to say was the what was it called? The Last Shark, the Enzo Castellari movie, is the one that's still absolutely not allowed. That's the one that, in the US you will get slapped with an injunction if you try and put The Last Shark or Great White,
right?
As that, because that one actually got pulled out of theaters when it came out, because it was released a few weeks before Jaws 2, and it had a helicopter. The shark brings down a helicopter sequence in it, and that was considered a little too similar to what they had in Jaws 2.
Was that Film Ventures? Was that Montoro?
It was Montoro, and he made an absolute fortune on it on those first couple of weeks before he had to pull it. But then, even when we did Inglourious Bastards, we were thinking of doing a double bill of Inglourious Bastards and Great White at the New Beverly with Enzo Castellari's in person, and immediately Universal were just like,
wow.
We hear you're thinking of screening. That was that. I'm paraphrasing what happened because I don't remember exactly who was contacted, but I know it was halted very early on. Even when it was at the discussion stage.
There's a documentary. Where the hell? What happened to Edward L. Montoro?
Well, so it's been talked about. This has, and I think didn't Daniel Griffith even start this?
I don't know. Yeah, because there's been a lot. He just disappeared. He just ran away, and no one knows where the hell he went.
He did, and everybody's got theories about what happened to Ed Montoro. So there's stories about the fact that he ran off with the money to Mexico or wherever it may be, and just lived out his days with lots of money, owing lots of people money, changed his identity. That was that. The other one was that the people he owed money to came out and put him in a hole in the desert. So it's like it's one or the other is the two main theories.
He's buried with Jimmy Hoffa somewhere in Detroit somewhere. Yeah. They buried him up here.
Yeah.
I gotta say, David, I've appreciated that over the years you've brought me in on a lot of your projects and I've always appreciated the fact that you've done that, because I've gotten to work on some really cool stuff for you. And
well, I appreciate when you do it, Michael. You're definitely one of the top of the game. So
thank you.
I'm happy. He's one of the OGs. Yeah. A lot of people may not realize, because I was looking this up, and I knew that we had received DVDs back in the original podcast days, but 20 years almost you're coming up on. That's
when I got
insane.
the job to do the second Sight Dawn of the Dead stuff, there was there was no question that I had to involve you in that too. I
enjoyed that. That was a lot. And then Martin, I got to do a little bit from Martin, and Midnight, as bizarre as that was. And then I got to tell this story. You called me up one day and said, "Hey, Mike, I don't know if you want to do anything for this or not, but we're doing Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker." And I just had to laugh because Bill Olsen had accused me of trying to hold up his release of that for years. Bill was convinced that I was waiting with a pack of lawyers to sue him over the rights to Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker. I had no connection to that movie. I don't know why he thought that. I have, to this day, I still cannot figure out. But he bashed me to Susan Tyrrell while interviewing her about, because this guy's trying to fuck me on this one. I don't.
Bill Olsen's one of the OGs too, man. But he's
not OG.
He was a character though. So when David asked me about Butcher Baker, I'm like, I think I kind of have to, because it's just how can I not do this? And it was after Bill had passed away, but it was just all right, I guess I finally should get my hands dirty with Butcher Baker.
Bill is gone, Sleepy, but Demon Dave is still around. And he is.
He was actually here.
Oh, was he?
A couple hours ago. Yeah.
I've never met DeFalco. I was at a convention with him once, but I never interacted. Yeah.
No, look, I honestly didn't dislike Olsen. He was just crazy. I didn't. I never once spoke to him. I never once had an actual. I had lunch with him once. He just talked the whole time.
Yeah.
And was hilariously inappropriate most of the time. There were families sitting nearby and things like that. So
Yeah.
it's like, Jesus Christ. But I think Lewis from Massacre was with us as well, and we all took a photo together, posted it on our Facebook. The boutiques have power lunch or whatever. When Olsen found out that it was me and Lewis that he had been sitting with, he was like, "You fucking tricked me into this. I told you who we were." You know,
How can he not know?
some kind of ambush. You know.
Oh my god! Well, he had an enemies list that went from here to all the way to Kansas.
But most of them were in his head. Like,
I never.
Well,
Yeah,
he in the 20 years of doing the show and the podcast and everything, he was the only guy that ever called us back and was like, "I want you to take a bunch of shit out that I said."
You get a whole
I want
list
you-
of stuff.
yeah, he was like, "I want you to take this out and this out." And he's like,
the man
Why?
compared me to Idi Amin once. He compared me to Idi,
Nice.
and I'm like, wow. Look, I mean, I haven't done nearly as much genocide as that guy, but I mean, still, I thought, well, I couldn't even get upset over that. I
Yeah.
couldn't even. It was just like, Idi, how did?
When I was, whenever he would go on a tirade about us, and it was usually, again, like,
Yeah.
stuff that I couldn't possibly say in a family forum like this. But,
"No."
but basically, it was like, geez, I don't even know how he came up with.
I know that was the thing.
Insults.
It was hard to get upset about it because it was so outlandish. It
Right, he was
like,
painting a picture of what would happen at night after everybody goes home in this office. I'm like, wow.
oh yeah, the lives he painted for all of us in our off hours were way more interesting than anything we ever did. And it was just like, damn, this was not as much bacchanalia as you would think. I mean, it was just.
He also created what I think might be the single greatest special feature on any disc of all time, which is, I think it's on Nightmare and a Damaged Brain. It's an interview, I'm pretty sure, but it had no subtitles and was in Italian.
That was an interview that I shot.
Was that Scavallini that you got?
Scavallini,
Yeah.
but he couldn't go to the expense of making subtitles. That's
I was
already a
like-
problem if they don't speak Italian.
How much would that really cost?
Yeah, that was an interview we shot for Ban the Sadist Videos, the documentary I did on.
Oh my
I
god!
remember watching that when it first came out, and I was like, I can't believe this. Like, I can't believe this exists. Like,
Oh, that was another one I got to where Nightmare. And
Okay, yeah,
Getting
absolutely.
Savini to talk
Getting
about
Savini
that.
to talk about Nightmare, fantastic.
Yeah, that was fun.
One of the big things, though, we kind of have to ask about it. It's Four Flies on Grey Velvet. Like, I think ultimately that was the turning point for you guys because you had a hell of a 2024, but that's kind of where it started, at least in my mind.
Yeah.
What was the deal with just having it on the site for 3 days? Was that some sort of deal with the owners of the movie or
Not
what?
really, and I can't really go into too much detail about it, other than that it was perfectly legitimate, and there was a lot of legal dialogue going on between us and one of the major studios. I'm sure you can figure out which one. But basically, we showed them our paperwork; they didn't show us theirs. And so basically we still own Four Flies on Grey Velvet as far as we're concerned for the USA. And so, but the problem is that I'm currently in a lawsuit on some other titles where where we have the legitimate paperwork for our rights and our release. But sometimes people like to be frivolous with their lawsuits, because when it comes to lawsuit, you're talking about a lot more money just to answer the lawsuit. It doesn't matter who actually is in the right, because basically, and this is not that I'm not talking about Four Flies here. I'm talking about a couple of other movies that. A couple of the Hong Kong movies that we've released, and basically, this company, they make a lot of money out of basically, suing people. And with Four Flies, we just decided, okay, we did well that first weekend. We'll bring it back eventually, but maybe we shouldn't tempt fate.
So 2024, though, I just want to go through a couple of these releases because this is insane to me. So you did The Church, The Sect, Butcher Baker, Nightmare Maker, Opera. I mean, all of these great
Cemetery
films.
Man.
Cemetery Man, a lot of great
Oh, yeah,
Italian
Della
films
Morte.
too. This to me, like, and I think that CK was saying this to me is like been like one of the years where I think you might have been like if not the top, then one of the top boutique labels in
Top
terms of
tier.
releases. Yeah.
Yeah, we
So
did a ranking. You guys were top tier for sure. 2024. It's just the truth. Like, you guys kicked ass. But go on.
I mean, we
I'm
don't
sorry.
usually kiss people's asses, but this is one of the things that,
No,
yeah,
they don't.
no, we don't. But
You
this
know.
is, the truth as well. Like, this is like a great year for you guys. And I'm just curious, like, I mean, how did all this come about this year? How did you get all these releases? Was it your intention? Like, okay, we're going to blow everybody away this year. Like, screw it. Like,
Well, I mean,
just
that's always the hope, isn't it? But I honestly, I think the turning point came probably while I was making the Al Adamson documentary. It seemed like we were getting a bit more ambitious with, the films that we could acquire, that we could acquire, that we could, kind of spread our wings a bit on the kind of films that we could do, that sort of thing. The team that was amassing, because for the first several years of Severin, it was just me, Carl, and John who formed the company. Then Nicole joined from MPI, and then it became a little more organized. But still, it was not. It was difficult to have a comfortable living every month. Like, sometimes it was it was not a good month. So we just have to So it's so we got to a point where the team was starting to build, and I started to get a little more comfortable with what we could go after, and with that came certain successes like the Al Adamson box and all the Hornsby Hours Volume 1. The Andy Milligan set was a huge hit for us, and there was a lot of individual titles that did really well. And of course, at that point, we had a pretty massive library, so even just the library income was enough that we could sign more movies. So we just finally reached a point where I'm like, okay, we can go after more movies in advance. Whereas for the first few years, it was like, right, how much can we actually put aside to buy another movie? It was it takes quite a bit to build a library. You have to either start with somebody investing quite a lot of money, or you just have to accept that the first several years could be a little rocky.
There was a time there too, 2011, 2012 or whatever, where it seemed like physical media was like kind of fading a little bit, and people they were streaming more and all that started. But then there was like a second wave. Was there any particular release that you guys noticed that kind of brought you up to that certain level that
well, I mean, it's constantly kind of evolving. Like, I think we realized that the DVD boom, right when we started, and when a lot of other boutique labels started after the initial Anchor Bay Image Media Blasters boom, a lot of the smaller labels started, many of which had worked for Anchor Bay or for Bill, and really kind of learnt the ropes in those earlier labels, including us. But at that point, the business was really going down. And I remember Bill telling me, now is not a good time to start a boutique label. But when Blu-ray came in, it kind of shifted. So the massive numbers never came back, right? But it became like a business of hardcore collectors. And so therefore it was enough of the hardcore collectors that you could kind of rely on a certain amount of sales happening, as long as you did a good disc, as long as the film was attractive, And so I think when we put out the Inglourious Bastards, Santa Sangre hardware on Blu-ray, some of our earlier Blu-ray releases, that's when we realized actually there is legs in Blu-ray. It's just never going to be what DVD was. So once we accepted that, and you kind of budget accordingly, then that was okay. And now same thing's happening again with UHD. Certain titles people want to upgrade. Something like Opera, a beautiful film.
Oh God, yeah. I mean,
needs to be on UHD, or a beautiful film like Burial Ground needs to be on UHD.
That one definitely does.
Cemetery Man
so
one in
basically
particular.
it's
Cemetery Man.
Christ.
Yeah, Cemetery Man was especially revelatory. That movie has never looked good on home video.
That's
ever.
right.
That was one where I saw it, and I just messaged Uncle Bill, and I was like, "You got to freaking look at this! Like, it's beautiful."
Yeah,
You know,
no,
so
that
maybe-
was, and something like that is something where you really need to go to town on the way we've done with the Russ Meyer movies now. Those are definitely films that need the absolute top tier restoration.
I was shocked you got Rupert Everett to talk about that, and apparently he's quite proud of the movie. So it was like,
who knew, right?
Yeah,
It was basically we had virtually given up because we'd gone through people who knew him, all that kind of thing, and he never actually said no. He was always sort of, I'm busy, or call me again in a month, and then just wouldn't answer, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It just came down to it. I can't even remember who was the last person to ask him, but it just came down to it, and he was in a play somewhere in England, and he was like, I can do it on Saturday. I was like, and so I got Jake West to go down and interview him in his dressing room at the theater where he was.
Yeah. Well, and it's a great interview too. He's not recalcitrant about it at all. He's just like, and he should be. He's great in the movie, and it's actually, hey, I'll watch that over that fucking Madonna movie he did any day of the week.
Yes.
I forgot he did that. Oh yeah,
It wasn't
He
that
was
long
just-
after that either, was it? Like,
Well,
what
that
year
was right.
that?
He had done my best friend's wedding or whatever it was, and he was on his way up. Then he did the next best thing, and then it just killed his career dead. But
yeah, I mean, I think he's still doing fine. I don't think.
He's doing good.
He's Rupert Everett will always be able to get work.
Yeah.
But I think it was just sort of.
He wasn't the big. He was the next.
Just like, I certainly don't want to become the Italian horror guy.
No.
But certainly it was a lead role. It was a lead role for a character that was based on him. In the Dylan Dog.
The Dylan Dog, yeah.
So, and funnily enough, I interviewed Michele Soavi in Rome the same day that Jake was interviewing Rupert Everett in.
Cool.
England. So
Now, did you guys announce Stage Fright? Because I may have dreamed it. Like
we didn't. No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
That's still with Blue Underground, I think.
Oh yeah.
So take us into the Russ Meyer stuff, though. Like, what made you decide to kind of go into that?
Well, it wasn't really our decision. It had been something we and other labels had wanted to do for some time. It's just that the trust was biding their time on deciding who to go with these films. And during that time, a lot of rumors were circulating about what had become of Russ's films. So it became like this sort of horrible crisis among film fans and film preservationists. Oh no, are all these films lost? Have all the negatives been thrown away? Because those were kind of the rumors that were going around. And the people at the trust were not entering into that dialogue. They were like, okay, we obviously, now that I know what was actually happening, and it was nowhere near as sensational as that, they were basically like, no, they did a few discs themselves, but at some point they must have realized, okay, if we're going to get these films properly remastered, then we need to partner up with a company that does this. And so it was a matter of them, taking the time to figure out who that's going to be. And we had to kind of audition for it and make a case for why we would, give these films the respect that they deserve. And we obviously were able to do that to the point where we entered into the deal for the first 5 films.
Wow.
Yeah, so you did the Vixen trilogy first, and just recently announced 2 more. So are there plans to do more after that, possibly? Or
we would love to, but it really we haven't signed any. So it's really a matter. I mean, we've now talked about we're going to meet them again and talk about what's next. But no, there's nothing actually concrete yet.
Yeah. And Beyond the Valley of Dolls, that's a Fox thing.
That's
right?
Fox.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a bunch of questions on here from people. We basically said, this is going to be taped, or it's not going to be live or anything like that. If you have any questions or anything like that, do you want to attempt to answer some of these questions, or do you have time?
I guess it depends what they are, but
none of them. Yeah, none of them are like, hey.
Actually, before we go on to that, Michael, was the first time we met at that fateful Anchor Bay party at VSDA in Vegas?
That would have been maybe the first time we actually met in person.
Yeah, because I know we definitely spoken on the phone a few times.
Oh, several times, yeah.
Various things, but
yeah, it was the one we had Adrian Pasdar and
when Adrian Pasdar was there, and this was during the divorce between Blue Underground and
Wim Wenders was there. And Monty Hellman walked by at one point. I mean, it was just insane. It was at the Rio. Yeah, it was at the
It was, and it was at the bar at the top.
Yes,
I think that might have been the first time that we actually met face to
I
face.
think so. Yeah, my favorite memory of that whole thing is watching. We were at the pool party or whatever, and there's steam rising up off the pool, and just like it's like a blanket of fog up there. And my favorite memory is watching Wim Wenders and Adrian Pastar walking and talking together and disappearing into the fog, and I never saw either one of them again. I was just like, that works for me. That seems appropriate.
That's it. Yeah, yeah. That was just after I'd gone to when Bill had formed Blue Underground.
Blue Underground. Yeah, that was a rocky time for everybody, but
It was.
you know,
Everyone got through it. It's fine.
we did. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yes, back to the questions or whatever.
All
You
right.
could do maybe speed rounds or something. That's if we don't have much time.
I've got time. I'm fine. Are you okay, Michael?
Oh yeah, I got nothing else to do.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. I've got
Yeah,
lots of
look.
stuff to do. I just don't want to do it.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Yeah, it's just
Good. Yeah.
He's just going to be playing with his pussy the rest of the night.
Okay.
Come on.
we were doing so well. We were doing really well, and then you had to go and be like that, you know.
That's just how we are.
You know,
Okay.
David, though, he has been on our show for going on. What was the first time you were on our show? Like it was in 2006, 2007. So he's been on our show so much, Felsher has, that he has his own theme song.
Yeah,
Oh God.
and don't think I'm not thrilled.
Excellent.
Okay, sorry.
All right, here we go. Beyond Sour Grounds asks, you guys should inquire about the unreleased Ruggero Deodato slashers like Booty Count, Dial Help, and The Washing Machine, since they're heavily requested titles. in
Somebody
films.
please release Body Count.
Yeah, please.
I agree. Somebody please release Body Count so that we don't get somebody saying, "Where's Body Count?" on
Right,
every
right.
single post.
Ruggero Deodato's Booty Count.
So Body Count, I know for a fact, will not be coming out through Severin. I know another label has been trying to sort out the rights, but the problem is the rights are owned by one entity and the elements are owned by another. And so therefore they are warring factions, and it's not even a question of going up to a certain number. They disagree on the ownership, both of them. So therefore there's an issue that needs to be resolved between two people who were involved in this movie way back. So that's that. Dial Help and Washing Machine. We've looked into them, but I honestly can't remember where it landed. I think on Dial Help, we don't know where the elements are. We haven't done a deal for it or anything, but they've certainly been looked into by us and by other boutique labels. And for one reason or another, we can't actually find either the rights or the elements or both.
Okay. He also says, ask about the remaining unreleased Video Nasties titles, since Dave is one of the foremost authorities we have on the Video Nasties, has made it his personal mission to distribute as many as possible.
Get him out.
You have done a shitload of those.
Yeah. No, I mean, I realized like that day that I got angry at the television for telling me that these movies were dangerous, at some like fucking archdeacon or somebody saying, watch the power of these movies over our children. I'm like, this guy's lying. I think that was the day where my life path was set. And basically I didn't realize it, but I became so passionate about being able to collect films that they were saying I couldn't see, that's what's led me here. And here I sit in my office and I've got all the original Video Nasties behind me. So this is the most expensive wall in Los Angeles. That's saying a lot, But okay, so all the Video Nasties but one, I believe, are on Blu-ray in one form or another. And that one is Unhinged. And we own Unhinged outright. We own the world. We bought the world rights off the producer-director, Don Gonquist. The problem is that there is no 35mm element that we can find in the world. So the best possible master is that VHS commercially released tape that sits behind me, or any one like it around the world. That one's PAL, so it's probably slightly better than the NTSCs that came out. But what happened was the film didn't come out theatrically anywhere except England. Okay, so it had like a screening in the US. Don does not remember what happened to his personal print, but likely that personal print was what was screened back in the 1 or 2 screenings it had at film markets and in Portland where it was shot. He does not know who he sold his print to. He remembers he sold it. We hope that someday that person will come forward and say, I've got that print of Unhinged, but as of now we don't know. We've done all the research as we can on the lab where they processed the film, which went out of business 20 something years ago. So finding out what happened to all that stuff, quite likely it was thrown away, the negative. Okay. Now, the one place where it did come out theatrically was England, and it actually came out through CBS Fox, which is a pretty major distributor. So even though it wasn't like a huge release, we estimate that there was probably 4 or 5 prints struck in the UK. The problem was it's the UK where it was banned. And so when I spoke to the guy who actually put it out, who ran Avatar, the company that put it out, he was like, I think I might have it in my storage unit. But when he went to his storage unit with a colleague, they remembered that when the whole Video Nasty thing was happened, they chucked all that stuff away because they were afraid that they were going to be arrested. And with obscene material. So we're pretty sure they just threw all that stuff away. So that's where it's at right now. But as of now, the best possible version is the commercially released VHS tapes.
Wow.
Well, you could do a VHS release, so that's a big thing.
Yeah.
That's it.
We could, yeah. And it won't be a Blu-ray, and that's the thing. But I don't know what else there is that's really outstanding. I mean, some of them, like I Miss You, Hugs and Kisses, which was one of the rare ones that we managed to clear the rights and put out. Again, there's no negative, so we had to rely on a old print in order to do that. And that's, it doesn't make for the best. It's certainly not going to be upgraded to UHD anytime soon.
Right.
We had an Argento question because you did the deep cut set last year. Great job on that one as well. And Four Flies, of course. Inferno, is that one that you could possibly do at some point in the future?
Well,
Mother of Tears is the other one.
I mean, I do Mother of Tears. I actually don't hold it in quite as low regard as a lot of people do. We've never even looked into the rights of that, actually, to be honest.
Silver, it's Lionsgate has
it. Is like, yeah, exactly. I thought it was some sort of major or major.
Yeah, they picked up the latter area Weinstein Company stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
So we wouldn't be able to get that anyway. But Inferno is owned by Disney. It's Fox.
Oh,
It
no.
has a Fox copyright on it. So, until they are sub-licensing to labels, we won't be able to get it. And it probably wouldn't be us anyway, because we don't play in the same sandbox as the studio.
That first Blu-ray is going to keep going up and up in price.
Oh, yeah. And the thing is, that's one where 4K would just...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that first scene, like...
Beautiful movie. But the problem is that the negative is at Fox, is at Disney. So even in the territories that Fox don't control,
they still have to get access to it.
Yeah, you'd still have to access it through Disney. And we did actually try at one point to do that, but they, led to
they don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
Carta asks, this is a great question. Will we ever get a Bruno Mattei box set?
Well, I mean, it would mean kind of putting all the stuff that we've released already into a box with some other stuff. I mean, we've got more Bruno Mattei coming, I can tell you that.
Oh, well, that's what he really wants to know, I think. Yeah.
But I don't know if it's... I've been very pleasantly surprised by how popular the Bruno Mattei films have been. People do see the joys in these movies, and I think time has been a lot kinder to them than some movies of that vintage, because now they are looked on with nostalgia, and people do can look past the rough edges, shall we say, and actually see the positives and why we enjoyed these movies. When they came out, of course, a lot of people were taking them off the shelves of the video stores, being tricked into thinking they were getting a Rambo movie or something with production values, and so they weren't particularly appreciated back then. They were considered the absolute bottom of the barrel. But now I think, just because they did actually manage to get stuff on film, like exploding huts and diving out of helicopters and that kind of thing, people appreciate that. that kind of entertainment and all the hokiness that they have in them. So, but yeah, as far as a box set goes, I there are. I hate the way everybody. I've now set up my own. I've set up my own hangman.
Yes, you have to do box sets now.
Yes,
That's all you
I'm the box set person, or we are, I should say. I certainly am not the only one here at Severin making these things happen. But yeah, then now it's kind of. So why don't you do a box set of this? Why don't you box set of that? And we even internally that happens. We're like, stop making everything a box set.
Because you don't just do 4 or 5 movies. Sometimes these box sets have 20 fucking movies in them.
Yeah,
man.
well, I know, and that's why we look forward to like the Danza Macabre films boxes, because at least it's just kind of 4
right,
vaguely related films that we're
Yeah.
doing as individuals and putting in a box, as opposed to a curated and themed massive 20 disc set.
I have a quick question for David. Actually,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, because you did one that I've been wanting to see come out for a long time. That was Eyes of Fire.
Yeah.
Which I absolutely loved. Avery Crowns has since passed away.
Yes, yeah.
What happened to the rights to his other movie, The Invisible Kid?
It's still a matter of the estate. And so we actually did communicate with his daughter a bit after he passed away, because we actually had got to the point where we did an offer for The Invisible Kid, because he had that negative as well.
Oh, okay.
But, he passed away, unfortunately, before the deal concluded. So, but yeah, I don't know what's going to become of those assets now, because I believe, there's family stuff that has to be figured out before anyone could do any further licensing of his rights.
Yeah, because his family was rich in money from some other thing. There was some like water or power or something. There was something else like the
Coal.
Crowns.
He lives in Kentucky, didn't he? Wasn't he?
He was from
Kentucky.
Yeah. So he was one of those people that we had to go to great lengths to find, basically, and
he was hard to find, very hard to find.
Track
We
him
know.
down between
We
Taylor
live
and
here too.
myself. Yeah, we managed to track him down, and he was actually, once we tracked him down, he was actually pretty easy to deal with, and luckily he had everything on his property, so it was once we found him, it all came together quite quickly.
Cool.
I just had to laugh because I look at the next question. It's about a box set.
Yeah.
I'm going to skip that question and go to the next one just to.
Hey, didn't
For
you
the
have
sake
something to show him? Do you have that hand?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was going to wait
'Cause
till
I
the
see-
end. But
I see
I'm
Night
nervous.
of the Demon. I just didn't know how
I'll show
much
you my
time.
dick, demon.
Demon.
Oh
So
yeah,
listen,
yeah,
listen.
yeah.
He's
I
doing the
got one
moonwalk.
right over
Yeah.
there. Same thing.
Kid, listen. This dick demon is now at, I don't know what that is, like a 60-degree angle. Can you help me with the dick demon? Is there anything
Need some blue
that
chew.
can be
The wrong
done?
guy. I am no good with any kind of building models or anything like that. All I
Can
knew.
we resurrect my dick demon? Is I
if
guess
we're-
what I'm
If
asking.
we're doing a Night of the Demon merch, we need to do a demon figure, and it needs to have a dick in his hand. That was basically all. That was as far as my involvement went.
I have a pumpkin head figure that had that same, but the ankles are weak, and it just kept slipping back
Yep.
forward. I actually had to glue it to the damn.
I'm going to have
table.
to get the dick demon erect again somehow. I don't know how.
The dick demon
Oh.
needed like a pole up his ass or something to keep it.
Yeah.
Yes, I guess.
All right. I swear there's 3 more questions about box sets. I'm not doing them. So,
You can ask. I mean, I'm just.
all right. Here, well, you asked for it. Edward says, how many box sets do they plan on putting out this year?
Good question. Let me have a look at the schedule as it stands now. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 7 that are potentially going to emerge this year.
Only 7? Boy, you're
And
slipping.
and one of them is massive. Actually, no, there's 8. Yeah, so one of them
Oh.
is like a Haunts Black Emmanuel level massive,
Oh, okay.
right? But the others aren't quite as huge as that, but still, box sets. So, but that's not to say they will. I mean, the schedule after May is very wishy-washy. It's sort of like it depends which one reaches the finish line first. So sometimes they just get pushed back, depending on production issues.
It says Alter Bridge says, could you ask David when the Cliff Twimlow box set is coming out and how many movies will be in it?
I can tell you that that is one of the ones that is scheduled for this year, and that is one of the ones that will definitely be this year. It is, and it's and most likely, let's just say it'll be before August, unless something goes terribly wrong.
Okay.
Very cool. Now,
And I was just looking at, I have like the Cliff Twemlow books of The Pike and the Beast of Cain and the Tuxedo Warrior right here, because we're considering whether or not we need to do new paperback editions of his Animals Attack pulp novels and his Bouncers Manifesto. So it's definitely in that stage where we're deciding what merch we're doing as well.
bundles and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
In 5 years, like as far as just the amount of releases, do you think this is something you guys can sustain with? Like the popularity of physical media, it seems like is just kind of continuously going down a little bit, getting more and more niche. How do you see the next 5 years for the boutique business?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily want to give a prediction on 5 years, but
Yeah.
I can say that to us, it does not seem like it's diminishing rapidly. It
No.
is. It's really kind of been at a plateau for a few years now, and not disappearing anytime soon. I mean, enough that us and Vinegar Syndrome and Kino and all these other labels are putting out a lot of stuff, and so and it's all doing fine. So yeah, it's still going to go while people are still buying physical media. And at this point, because we're now in that part that I described earlier, where we're talking about proper collectors, proper cineasts who want to own a library, they're I don't know that too many of those are dropping off.
It does seem like every year I think, well, this is going to be the last year. I'm this busy.
Yeah.
But then the next year it's like, oh, Jesus Christ. And then it reminds me of what it was like in the halcyon days of the laser discs.
Yeah.
Like that was a collector's market, and you could charge, you charge a premium for what you were getting, but you were getting these really deluxe editions, and it's kind of gone back to that.
Well, it has, and that's simply a question of economics. It's basically because there are less people buying the stuff, but you have a reliable sort of number of people on a given release. The price has to be at a certain level. It's not as simple as, so I'll give you an example. Somebody, commented on how expensive the Hell of the Living Dead novelization was, but that thing is nearly 600 pages, right? And basically somebody was like, oh, that's the size of a mass market book. That should be at this price, but this is not mass market.
No,
Hell of the Living Dead novelization is not going into Walmart. It is not going into Barnes and Noble or major chains. It is not selling by the truckload from Amazon. It is selling to the hardcore fans, you know what I mean? So for that reason, just for a minimum run of that is a certain cost, and you have to make that certain cost back with that amount of people who are going to buy it. It's simply economics. So therefore, the fact that the prices of major special editions seems high, it really isn't. It's like when you consider the amount of money that goes into producing these discs, not just that package, but all the production that goes into restoring a film and all the extras and all that kind of thing, that is a pretty high number. And so you have to kind of figure out that to make sure that we can do it again.
Yeah, because I got a lot of questions. Why is Trick or Treat? Is one movie is $66, and I'm like,
we got a lot of questions like that too.
It wasn't an arbitrary choice, really,
right?
Because at the end of the day, damn near $100,000 went into that by the time it was all said and done.
Yeah, absolutely, and you can say the same about All the Haunts 3 Hours, for example. It's basically when people are like, who has $150 to drop on a piece of physical media? I'm like, well, it's a bit more than a piece of physical media,
right?
But the hundreds of things that are included, hundreds of hours of stuff that is included across all those discs, and a fucking book that was created for this thing, and then all the packaging that's involved. No, it's like I'm not forcing you to get it. You are not forced to buy this thing. I'm not holding you responsible for not getting it. What I'm saying is that believe me, you are getting serious value for money. On that box set when you get it.
Well, and just the packaging on it too, because we are the cardboard enthusiasts here for sure.
Yeah, I wondered if that was going to come up.
But seriously, it's come a long way as well. The clone set, man. When I was looking through that, I was like, holy shit! Like this is like the big stuff that Anchor Bay did back in the day, kind of their big box.
Oh, and it's even more elaborate than some of that stuff was.
And then the all the haunt sets and everything too. Those are very, very detailed and everything. So,
so it is. So the people who are, and as Mike said, it's these are not arbitrary numbers that we come up with because we can, ream people for every.
Yeah, it's not like we're sitting there going, "Oh, we're gonna fuck them."
I know you were, Felsher.
I was not. No.
We know our audience is like us, and when we talk to people at conventions and things like that, we have a lot to share. We're all kind of in the same boat with the stuff that we love. But for that reason, we want to do things as well as we possibly can. And that includes producing like really quality special features and stuff like that. And that involves a lot of people and costs a lot of money, and that's not.
It adds up.
Before you start about the license for the movie and the cost of restoring it.
Yeah, it adds up fast. You just don't realize until you're at the end of the process. You look back. Oh, that's right. Every single bit of this costs money. Yeah. Every single and to get the really high quality paper for the book or to get those slip cases, those chipboard slip cases. Those are ridiculously costly, actually, because you got to get them done overseas, and then
that's your moneymaker, though, man.
You can't flatten them.
You can't flatten them. They have to ship as is. Yeah,
they have to be shipped, and
you can't just release anything without a slipcase.
I want to seriously ask both of y'all about that though. Like the state with slip covers at this stage, I think that was Vinegar Syndrome. That really popularized that.
They did.
I saw it happen. Because Joe from Vinegar Syndrome works here at the Severin office because he's based in LA. And I saw it happening. He was like, we don't want to put a slipcover on everything. That's ridiculous. It should be something special. But then as they saw people responding to the slips, then it just gradually was like, well, maybe we should put a slipcover on everything, and that's kind of how that developed. We still don't put a slipcover on everything. Or a slipcase, whichever is which. But
we still don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out.
I'm gonna go to my grave.
But
to be honest, I even though I it's not like my area in Severin, I do get it when I receive those packages with the really nice sturdy, this guy came in. I'm like, this is a nice package.
It's a rigid case, as they say.
It's very hard.
Yeah. And another good thing is those things are a lot more durable and can take a lot more abuse than say like a steel book.
Yeah.
Which and the
but
steel
people love steel books still too, which is
steel books are kind of going out.
So we still release a few things in England as well, and they're like, you should just do a steelbook edition of such and such just for England, and I'm like, is that a thing? I mean, is that
the thing that got me with steelbooks eventually was it's too easy for one little ding to happen, and some guy's like, I'm sorry, but there's a 5-centimeter ding.
Listen, I swear to God, Felsher,
you can't ship
I was
them,
just
you really
trying,
can't.
Look, I was just trying to sell a steelbook to a guy, and it literally had, I don't know, like a millimeter indention in it, and I sent him a picture of it because I know how people are, and I'm like, listen, this is in there, and he was like, I don't want it.
That's ruined. It's ruined.
I was like,
imagine getting that 100 times a day. Every day.
Yeah.
No, I'm good.
That's why I don't even want to
enough.
deal with doing steelbooks for anything. It's like it's not worth all the bullshit. It's just not worth all that.
But I got a question here from Joe Garcia, Mr.
T-shirt
David Gregory.
Yes,
Joe.
T-shirt Joe. How does it feel to be creating, rescuing, and releasing the world's most provocative cinema?
Jesus Christ!
Oh man,
no, you're taking the piss.
I think you have to crawl up his ass to ask a question like that.
Hey, listen.
Well, Joe, let me tell you what it's like to be on top of the world.
Oh, well, God,
doing, as they say,
Fucking
the Lord's work. You wouldn't understand. You're just in the shirt business.
Poor old Joe.
Joe
Every
is
time,
always a
listen.
good friend. I was a
No, every single time that we would ever like do a physical media show and then any kind of
Severin
Severin release,
rules.
Joe would get in there and he would just promote the shit out of Severin like every single time.
I
So he's
love Joe.
fiercely
He's so
loyal.
great.
Yeah.
Buy your shirts at Fast Custom Shirts.
Still to this day, when I smell beer, I think of Joe.
Yep, every time. Okay. Frank's Media wants to know, due to the packaging issues with Kathy's curse, will you guys be making any more unique slipcases like that in the near future? It was a creative release and I like the idea of it, but it did not work the way that you guys wanted it to.
Correct. It's so here's the thing is that basically we wanted to do that flashing eye thing the first time we released Kathy's Curse, and we got to the point where I was like, nobody can actually do this in a satisfactory way. And so we went ahead without that. Then when we found the original negative of Kathy's Curse, which was kind of a big deal because the Blu-ray was done from a print, and we found the original negative, and it was a major upgrade of the movie. And that's another one, kind of like the Bruno Mattei movies, where it's like it's rough around the edges, actually makes it very charming, and there's one that's actually aged quite well. It's a very entertaining movie. So I'm like, now let's revisit the idea of doing that. My God, was that one of those things where I just completely regretted the fact that
Yeah, there was a reason nobody did
trying
that.
to make unique stuff, because we do stuff like the Simple Dwarf doll and all that kind of thing. It's like, suddenly there are certain things that match with certain products where it's like, this is going to be awesome.
The Spinell plush was amazing.
Yeah, I've got it back there
Spinell
somewhere.
plush, yeah. But again, that was another one where we had to go to extra lengths to make it look like Joe Spinell, right? So and the costume and the tattoo on the hand. So that was like a lot. We went way further on that one. But what you don't take into account necessarily is the fact that these things are being manufactured in Asia, and the manufacturing issues that might come up will often add weeks to they were being done somewhere else in California or somewhere else in the United States. But we couldn't do it here because it would be way too expensive, and you don't want to be spending $300 on a Joe Spinell doll. But with the Kathy's Curse thing, once they started arriving, we realized that there were several issues with it, and so if we had to go back to the manufacturer. They admitted it was their error. Weeks go by before they actually fix the error. We get them, and it's like, these are still not satisfactory. These are still flawed. Like, one of the eyes doesn't work, or you can't figure out how to switch it off, or things like that. And it was just like, why did we even bother? Like, this is just because if we get them to even admit that they've done it wrong and pay to do it again, as we did the first time around, that's another couple of months before we actually get the finished goods. And does anybody care at that point? It was just like, so at that point I had to lay down the gauntlet. I'm like, we really have to think long and hard when we're going to do something special that needs to be manufactured overseas. And because it also has to, if you ship it by plane, it's thousands and thousands of dollars more than shipping it by boat. But boat takes, a couple of months, whereas plane takes, a few days.
Now, what about like the psychic music box and things like that? Was that done here? Was that done overseas? Because that seemed to work pretty well.
Yes. No, I think it was done overseas. I don't know. I would have to. Okay. I don't actually deal with the manufacturing of the merch. I just hear when there's a problem. I hear the ideas.
That'd be great. That'd be a great time for you.
But yeah, I mean, I guess that's a simpler thing, though. It's not quite as unique. So they make those music boxes to be in tourist traps all around the world of, various, like, Welcome to Rome, and it'll play some Italian song, So people were, and the fact that it was literally 7 notes made it kind of an easy one to actually do.
7 Notes in Black, man. I love the name. That should have been the name of that movie. I've always said that.
Well, it is. But
well, I mean, here in the U.S.
The Psychic. What a generic ass title that was.
Yeah, it really is.
No, hearing Dave talk about the fucking Kathy's Curse thing just reminded me of the process we went through on the Book of the Dead back in Anchor Bay, which was even worse because back then you couldn't email or Zoom or do anything like that. You had to fax shit. over
right.
to the, and China, for every one thing they would get right or fix, they would suddenly screw up 2 other things. And so we got these books back. It's like, how did it took a year? It took a whole year to get that done.
That's right. And I think I remember being in Rome with Bill when he got the call from Jay that we weren't allowed to include Woods
on the Black Monday.
And thousands of discs had already been replicated with it on. We'd rescored the film. We'd actually, because it had, the rumor was always that it was the Death Wish music that was not allowed.
Well, there was Patton in there. There was a whole bunch of stuff. Planet of the Apes was in there.
My friend Mark Raskin had rescored it, so it was a sound alike, but not exactly that. And so we were really pleased with ourselves that we had this and went ahead and replicated all those discs.
Oh, that was a bad day, because I remember we had all of the caps for the packaging were all done. 200,000 of them have been printed up.
Well, the menu is still on the disc, though, right?
Yeah, they just got rid of it but they still left the little preface menu saying, "Hey, we've rescored this." Good, and it's like, no, you're not going to watch shit.
Oh, I didn't even realize that. That's funny.
Yeah, they left it on. They took Within the Woods off, but the little preamble, little prologue for it, saying this has been cleaned up and we've rescored it. Enjoy. No, not really.
And it's never actually there. Yeah, no, that release. But of course, back then when you were selling 200,000 of something, you can work
we did okay. No one was crying at the end of the day over that.
Yeah.
Now, there's always a couple of Anchor Bay titles that from back in the day that I mentioned to Felsher on here that have never been re-released, and I wanted to mention them to you. Anguish. Could we ever be seeing that one again here in the U.S.?
It's not owned by the same company. It's same with Pin. It's not owned by the same company.
That was the other one, actually.
Yeah, I know who owns Pin. I do.
But they were both Lakeshore, weren't they, Mike?
Anguish wasn't. Pin was, because it was a New World title for a long time. But then that expired. But now I finally, because it's funny, I've been working on trying to get that, because I love Pin. I just think
Pin's great, and I spoke to the director not long ago.
Oh, Sander, he's still around?
I'd say not long ago. It's probably like 7 years at this point. That's just how time goes.
Yeah.
But it was something for Amateurville. But I
got
into a dialogue with him about Pin, and it reached a dead end where he was like, he had no idea who.
Yeah, I got to back up on that one, because I love that. I wrote the liner notes for that back in the day, and I think that's such. And I always love the fact that now the voice of Pin. You know who does the voice of Pin?
No,
it's Jonathan Banks from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Yeah. It's like, of all the fucking people, it's like,
and Anguish, wasn't that a Biggest Luna movie?
It was Biggest Luna.
Yeah. So we've been doing a lot of Spanish.
Felsher did the liner notes for that one too.
That's
why
did.
I sent you the other day.
I wrote way too many of those things.
But I don't know. I don't know if anyone knows who owns it.
That would be a good one to bring, because it was Key Video had it out here in the States back in the day.
Yeah,
I think it's reverted. It's reverted to a Spanish company or something.
Yeah, but it hasn't. That's the thing. We've looked into
really?
If it is with a Spanish company, that Spanish company doesn't know they own it.
Yeah, that could be a possibility too. That's
another one though, since you guessed it, the guinea pig movies.
I think that's more
Unearthed.
It's more of a Biro territory.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, he told me that it's never coming back out, but I don't know why. Yeah.
Well, I can't. Well, they're great family movies. I don't know why.
That's a first date movie for sure.
Oh yeah.
That'd be a killer documentary to make though about those movies.
That would,
yeah. But again, Byro's getting into the documentary.
Yeah.
Well, so it might be something for him.
Yeah, because didn't he just do the Serbian film documentary too? He just did that, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Only one question left, and it is: ask him if there's any possibility of the Redeemer, aka Class Reunion Massacre, getting released. Which I guess was
it won't be through us. I know that because it's owned. And the film elements are owned by another boutique label, but I'm not at liberty to say who. Gotcha. But it's not. But it wasn't one of the ones that basically reverted back to a producer after Code Red's rights expired, as is the case with quite a few films we've done recently.
Finally, just for my own personal curiosity, who's the boutique label that you think is doing the best job right now, and who's the one that you just like hate?
Well, I'm not going to say who I hate.
He's not going to say that. He's not going to.
Well, fuck,
Screen
I can ask
Factory.
it. He can say whatever he wants.
We don't have to work together at one point or another. We can't.
Who's
fucking-
the one that both y'all secretly talk shit about? When he's like, I know
Well,
there's
there
at least
is
one.
definitely one. but
There's
I'm not
one,
gonna
and I
say who.
guarantee
No, yeah, there's always one.
No, I mean, I still love Mondo Macabro. I still think, the fact that Peter's really kind of stuck to his guns on really going out there and really stretching the definition of what we as horror fans, pushing us out of our comfort zone, I guess is what it is. And he's always done that, and he's always been the one to write books about, the world of strange films, because there is so much more out there than we know about. And obviously the DVD, Blu-ray, UHD market has introduced us to any number of things, the VHS market before that, but there's still a lot to explore and a lot to be uncovered. And so I really like Mondo Macabro and what they do. But there's others. I like Vinegar Syndrome. I still like Blue Underground. I still like Kino. So, I'm not, they all do good work. So.
Well, and you're from the UK, of course.
Yeah.
I think that Second Sight and Arrow were killing it too.
Yeah, Second Sight for sure. Second Sight, I love the way they have just they'll concentrate on, just a handful of movies, but really go.
Yeah, that Hitcher set was incredible.
Yeah,
man.
Dawn
Dawn of the Dead was fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, so those guys I've known and worked with and I'm friendly with, and I just wish them the very best, because I think the additions they do are fantastic.
Yeah.
So unlike Slippy, who will never give us a scoop, are there any scoops that you can give us about anything coming out?
The Cliff Twemlow box will be out.
We got that one. Yeah, that's one scoop.
You heard it here.
That's not going to be good enough for them. That's not going to be good enough for
Well,
them.
it's 2 scoops. So,
Felsher, give us a scoop.
Felsher, give us the scoop.
I have nothing to tell you. I
What's
can't.
that
tell
Nightmare
you.
box set coming out? Come on.
Oh, fuck off.
You know.
Nightmare in a Damaged Brain? Oh,
No,
yeah.
they seem to think that I'm perpetually working on a Nightmare on Elm Street box for
Oh,
somebody. I don't know who.
Warner Brothers.
We don't think
no.
it. We
Warner
know.
Brothers doesn't hire me. They don't. Fucking.
That's true. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
What do you think though about like Felsher starting his own label, and he's kind of competing with you? I mean, you guys.
At least
He's trying at
He's
least to
been in
compete
the
with you.
business as long as I have. He has every right to do that.
Trick or treat
and it's
style.
He's good at it. He's passionate about it. Why not?
He said before you got on there, he's like, I'm going to put them all out of business. I don't
Oh,
give a
yeah,
shit.
Yeah.
that's what
Pretty
yeah.
much. I mean, he was bragging about his pussy hammock back there, and that
Yeah.
cat's enjoying it.
No, and the
He can
thing is,
afford that.
here's the thing that I do want to address, and I'm sure David could address this as well. There's this perception that everyone in the boutique label business hates each other.
Well, that's
And they're
how
trying
we
to-
like to look at
and
it.
is trying to fuck each other over at every case. It's not like that at all. It really isn't.
What
I mean,
about
there's
Demon Dave? He's challenged you to a steel cage match.
company-
I mean,
So
he wants you
Demon-
to sign a waiver
So,
and meet
like,
him.
I mean, I love it. I want the.
But it's
honestly,
all-
I would actually pay-per-view to see
Me too.
He-
Yeah.
Cage.
I think he would do it. I really do.
Oh, he would. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
just-
of course he would. Have you seen how he's built? I mean, my God. But no, it's again, there's competition, sure, and stuff like that. But we all rely on each other to a lot. I mean, there's a lot of
But we also all work with a lot of the same people.
right. Yeah,
So
know.
there's very few at the actual
it's a small
label
pond.
law that
Yeah,
that are often remarked upon.
It's a small pond, and it's a very incestuous one at that.
Yeah.
There's just we have all known each other for years, and we all support each other at the end of the day. Because what's the point of being, like, oh, fuck those guys, or it doesn't work. It doesn't benefit your own mental health, nor does it benefit your working relationships on titles either. So, I mean, privately, I can't stand David, but I never tell him that.
Exactly. We only get to see each other once every few years. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So,
it's easy to
because
put a-
let's fuck it. That's fine. That's just like.
All right. Well, man, we appreciate you taking the extra time out and everything, and it's good to get you on here. Hopefully, it wasn't as bad as you were thinking it was going to be.
Oh, he was
That's
just
it.
like, I don't
Hopefully it
know if I
wasn't
want.
as
I don't know if I
bad
want to do
as
what
you were thinking.
I'm like, what are they gonna fucking haze me for an hour?
Oh yeah, he was. David was very worried. He said, I don't know. I don't. Those guys.
We're
hate me.
professional. We're professional horologists. We've been doing this for 20 years. We're not going to come on here and do
Well,
some
we've been
sort
putting
of
Severin over pretty hardcore
shit.
for the last couple of years.
Yeah,
honestly.
I know, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
I want all these people to click everything they're supposed to click.
You haven't been liking them. You haven't been subscribing to them. You haven't clicked the bell or notification or anything like that.
Folks, why don't you click the like button?
Do you hate us? Do you not want to see us succeed?
Why don't you click the heart button?
Is this something that you have against our particular show?
Why don't you subscribe?
You should click on one of them buttons right now if you want us to continue to bring greatness into your life.
There's all kinds of wonderful shirts over at shop.deadpit.com. Simply the best horror shirts. On TeePublic, there are others, but they all suck. You can get some Dead Pit Radio shirts. You can get Last South on the Left. The Hills Have Eyes. Texas Chainsaw. Oh, wait, you can't say Texas Chainsaw. All kinds of shirts, folks. You're gonna love them. Shop.deadpit.com.
Special thanks goes out to our supporters on Patreon. You know what kind of stuff you can get on Patreon, Uncle Bill, starting at only $1 a month?
What's that?
Access to every Dead Pit show since 2005. We got almost 200 fan commentaries that we've done over the decades.
Here's what other fucking Patreons do. They're like, hey, give us money and then we'll let you see a video early that we're going to release like a fucking week from now, and then that's all we're going to give you. Meanwhile, we have a literal jukebox full of songs, thousands of reviews. I don't even know how many shows are up on there now that we've done over the years.
Hundreds of thousands.
You need to figure this out now and subscribe to us on Patreon and YouTube and Instagram. Help us to 1 million. The road to 1 million subscribers starts today.
So deadpitonpatreon.com. Join today. Tiers start at only $1, but I'd recommend at least the $10 tier.
You can do 50. The stock market's crashing around us, folks, but send us money.